for us, okay? I want to bring in now former Navy JAG officer. He's now a Republican candidate for the United States Senate of North Carolina, running against a Republican I don't really like all that much in North Carolina. That would be Tom Tillis, who's been a big disappointment, I think, to Make America Great Again conservatives. We're talking about Don Brown. Don, welcome to the program, sir.
Rick, thanks for having me. I agree with you on Tillis, and it is a great day for freedom. Looking forward to chatting with you about it this evening.
All right. You were a U.S. attorney, correct?
Special Assistant U.S. Attorney. I wasn't the U.S. Attorney, but yes, I was in the U.S. Attorney's office in San Diego and have seen a little bit of the inside of this stuff myself.
All right. What do you make of today's ruling and how the left had weaponized just a very few handful of district courts?
Well, weaponized is absolutely correct. I mean, if you go back to 2017, one of President Trump's first executive orders was a travel ban. You may remember that. He signed that in January. By February, there was this district judge in Washington, James Robart, who signed an order deeming it unconstitutional. That was followed up by Derek Watson in Hawaii. That case went to the Ninth Circuit. They upheld the liberal judges. Finally, in June of 2018, 1 year and 4 months later, the Supreme Court reversed the district court and the Court of Appeals and reinstated the travel ban. But Grant, in that 1 year and 4 months, you have all kinds of people coming in from these Sharia countries, which the president had a right under the Immigration Act to ban anyway. So that's an example of how ridiculous this is. The court in this case looked at the Judiciary Act of 1787, the very first Judiciary Act, where Congress created these district courts, and concluded that it does not give the power for nationwide injunctions, period. But I'll go farther than that. If you go back and look at Federalist 78, it was written by Alexander Hamilton. You know, when they were trying to persuade the states to adopt the Constitution, one of the greatest fears was out-of-control judges. And in Federalist 78, they tried to persuade the states to adopt the Constitution and ratify it. Alexander Hamilton made 3 points. Number one, he said the judiciary is by far to be the weakest branch of government. So the notion of co-equal branches of government is a constitutional fiction. But here's what he also said, number two, that these judges have no power. Now get this, Alexander Hamilton, to persuade the states to ratify the Constitution, says judges have no power to issue any orders against either the executive or against the legislature. And went on to say that the greatest fear will be judges who step into the role not only of judge, but of as president and as members of the Congress. And these judges have basically turned that on its head. There is zero statutory authority at all for nationwide injunctions, none. And I would argue that the Constitution prohibits it as well. The Supreme Court has taken a great step today to put an end to this, but I would say Congress needs to go farther. We need what I call a Judicial Separation of Powers Act to clip the wings of these out-of-control judges and totally take away their ability to do anything in the area of immigration and naturalization or the United States military. Because to try to interfere in immigration and naturalization by a federal judge, that is a bastardization of the great constitutional notion of separation of powers. Congress must put an end to it, but today is a day for celebration.
Yeah, it sure is. And you mentioned Congress. The Constitution lays it out, can decide how they want the judicial system set up, and Congress could radically change it if they wanted to. I'm very disappointed in Congress and their willingness to go that far. You mentioned birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court did not actually rule on whether or not birthright citizenship is a constitutional right, meaning that you come to the United States, you have a baby here, and then all of a sudden that baby is a United States citizen. I'm going to play a clip from the Illinois Attorney General, and then I'd like your response to what he has to say about this. Roll it, guys.
It highlights just a blatant disregard for the Constitution. What I mean by that is the language is so clear in the 14th Amendment that the president would start with disregarding an amendment with such clear language that you are a citizen of the United States if you're born here and subject to its law.
So he mentioned the last line, Don, subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Now, they wouldn't put that line in if they just said if you were born here or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction. You don't need that line if they're talking about everybody should just be a citizen when they're born here.
Correct. And so I'm glad you Illinois Attorney General is like most Democrat politicians in Illinois. He doesn't know his head from anything else. It was an Illinois senator in 1868, Lyman Trumbull, who principally drafted the 14th Amendment to begin with. Remember, there are 3 Civil War amendments. The 14th Amendment was drafted by Senator Trumbull, and he went onto the floor of the United States Senate, and this is recorded in the congressional record, that the 14th Amendment was to grant citizenship only to the children of liberated slaves in the United States. And those slaves had been liberated by the 13th Amendment and now were subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and thus became citizens. That is the author of the 14th Amendment, saying it applied only initially to slaves. In 1898, there was a case called Kim Wong Ark, in which there was a Chinese national who was born to Chinese immigrants who were not citizens but were legal residents of the United States. The court said, well, he has birthright citizenship. But that was then extrapolated to kids born who were totally illegal parents. And the Democrats have pushed this notion. And so the president's executive order was going to correct that. That's what they sued about. This court did not address that today, as you pointed out. It's going to have to be addressed, but the author of the 14th Amendment said it only applied to the children of slaves who had been granted citizenship. So the Illinois Attorney General should study a little history from his own state.
Yeah. Well, my guess is Tom Tillis couldn't have done what you just did there, laying out all these legal cases, Don Brown. And we appreciate you coming on the program. I want to get you back real soon, and then let's talk about, just how MAGA you are, what you can bring to the United States Senate, and how you can do a better job than Tom Tillis. We'll do that next time. Don Brown, thank you for coming on, all right? We wish you luck.
Thank you, God. God bless you, Grant. Talk to you soon.